the CEO of the Girl Scouts was presenting. And I'm like, why is she presenting in the tent of cybersecurity at a Salesforce conference? This doesn't make sense at all. And she presents and she says, do you know the number one badge that these little girls at the Girl Scouts are requesting today? And I'm thinking, no, brownies? Like, I don't know. I wasn't a Girl Scout. I don't really get it. And she's like, no, it's actually cybersecurity and privacy. I'm like,
Wow.
what?
I didn't know that at all. All right. So, hi, everyone. I am here today with Jessica, and we're going to talk about cybersecurity. Now, I met Jessica when I started my MBA process. At that point, she was part of the career office, and I know that she was the point person to go to for anything sales related. But within the time, I guess like within a year of my time in the MBA at YESA, I saw she changed roles to now be like the top. I don't know what your title officially is, but it's something to do with cybersecurity and it's for Yesi. And I was like, okay, like when did this happen? But I also remember that she would always remind us about the importance of it. And she would always, hint that we should do these certificates or anything that we needed to get tech ready if we were recruiting for a technical job. So now that she's a pro in cybersecurity, in my opinion, I invited her here today to talk to us about it. So Jessica, so happy to have you. But before we start, how about you introduce yourself for our listeners?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to do this podcast with you. So I'm originally from California. I did my undergraduate actually in history, so nothing to do with anything technical. I then decided to learn something about something I knew nothing about, which was finance, and go somewhere that I actually wasn't interested in going, which was New York. So I went in 2009 when everyone was kind of leaving New York at that time. And I joined a company by the name of Capital IQ. It was owned by Standard & Poor's. And so there I was actually helping various investment banks, private equity firms use data and analytics for their comp analyses. So I did that for a few years, and then I decided, look, I need to pivot. So I did the MBA at ESA in Barcelona. And upon completion of ESA, I then went into the tech sector. I worked at some various startups, worked out of the Salesforce incubator in California, and then joined IBM. And at IBM, I was actually selling hardware, software, and services. And then one day, a little known thing called WannaCry happened. This was in about 2017. It was a ransomware attack, and we'll explain that in a second. And that was my calling to cybersecurity. So I joined the cybersecurity team. I sold products for IBM, and then I joined the strategy team for security as well. And then full circle, came back to Barcelona for personal reasons, left IBM, joined ESA, as you said, within the CDC. And not just sales, but I was pushing everything on enterprise technology. But my heart is, yes, quite often in sales, especially for the MBAs. It's an overlooked function, I think. And then recently joined the security team at ESA, helping to defend on the front lines against cyber attacks for ESA. That's
Okay.
me.
All right. Yeah, that I think that is so interesting. And yeah, we'll definitely talk more about what did you call it? Wanna
Want to cry?
Wanna cry?
It's a ransomware.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Great. So let's jump straight into it then. Let's say you were talking to someone. Most people, I think, now know what cybersecurity is, but imagine you met someone that didn't know about it.
Sure.
How would you describe cybersecurity to them? Is there a way to define it or explain it for them?
Yeah. And actually, it just happened the other day that I did meet someone who did not know what cybersecurity was at all. Shocking, I know. So you kind of look at it as protecting all of your data and all of your physical assets and your information, as I mentioned, and your networks. So it's really the three things: networks, your data, and your assets. Now, people think, okay, well, maybe they define it as like connected, and I don't think that's actually the accurate definition, because I think you need to also protect any physical device that's not connected to the internet but that has your data, right? And you're preventing any unauthorized access. So say I want to access your accounts, no go, we should not allow that. Or criminal access, so any bad actors like criminals out there, wherever they may be across the globe. We do not want them accessing your account. And that's how I would define it.
Okay. And you mentioned there, you also said physical assets, because I would have imagined that cyber threats only happen in the space of the digital world. So how does that kind of tie back to physical assets?
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're looking at like your computer, right? And you need to make sure that no one walks away with your computer. And so that's what we mean by defending the physical assets. There's a thing called dumpster diving. People will maybe they'll have their hard drives, their computers, and they won't have them actually correctly disassembled, reset, and all these things. People forget how many things are stored and how deep they're stored on these devices. So you actually have to protect those devices physically, right? Also paper. Companies that print and still use paper, that information is really important, that it is not accessed by those who are unauthorized. And so maybe shredding devices, things like this. So it actually goes beyond the physical realm. Yeah. For example, one more example, I recently found out, printers, for example, we think we just print and that's it, or it makes a copy and that's it. But I think it was over 10 years ago, a special victims kind of unit in the police force realized, oh, every time we copy or print information on these victims, it's stored. We didn't know. And when we were done with the printer, when it was end of life, we just threw it away. We didn't disassemble it, forensically clean it out. Exactly. So things like this can still happen.
Wow. Okay. I'm listening to that and I'm like, yeah, imagine how many cell phones people throw away. Yeah, we don't really think about that aspect.
No. I think what's the craziest thing about cybersecurity is that when you read real life stories of what's going on, it's crazier than you see it in the movies. It is
Yeah.
You don't need to read fiction when you're in cybersecurity.
Imagine. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll come back to more details on that for sure. And thanks for indulging that segue there. But could you tell us maybe, a little bit about the history of cybersecurity? If you know, when has it existed only when things started getting digital, or now that we're talking about physical assets before computers, was it still a problem then and considered cybersecurity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know when exactly the terminology cybersecurity was applied to these things that were happening in the 1800s. I don't know that answer, but I will say, with the telephone systems, as soon as Bell came out and made it possible to communicate via telephone systems, people were hacking it. People were pulling plugs and switching them physically just for pranks. And I think that's what's the kind of consistent trend in cybersecurity, that you'll see a lot of bad actors, malicious people who might not always understand the extent of what they're doing, because it's very hard to ascertain how everything is connected, especially in later hacks. And so you see these people who are just tinkering, and they're actually posing a lot of danger and time and money that has to be spent to be fixing things. So kind of 1800s, late 1800s, early 1900s is when it started. 1970s was when it kind of, for me, it was a very interesting story that came out and is based upon, well, the movie is based upon this. You've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, correct?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, so that's actually based upon Frank Abagnale. He actually then became a cybersecurity professional. But he's riding on Pan Am or flying on Pan Am, forging checks. That's actually quite a good case study of what happened in the 70s. It's comical in the movie. And again, he might not have understood at the time at such a young age. It was 16 or 18 years of age, flying these planes. Didn't understand exactly the repercussions, all the money spent by our hardworking dollars, taxpayer dollars, to go catch him. And then he turns good, right? He starts to then advise maybe the FBI, I forget which agency it was that was looking for him. And then he started working for them. So that's one case. In the 80s, you've got the Morris worm. I don't know if you've heard of this. Okay, this was kind of interesting because you had an NSA, National Security. You all know NSA from the whistleblower, right? So you've got a hacker who's actually the son of an NSA agent. He's just at Cornell, and he's just let's just see how far and fast this, I think it was a worm, would fly. How fast will it go? And so he releases the first one, and it's, I don't think he goes to jail, but he's actually and he doesn't actually lock down or steal anything, but he just locks down computer resources. It becomes a pretty big thing. He then becomes, I think, an investor or co-founder even of Y Combinator. Do you know Y Combinator?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can start to see that a lot of these bad hackers turn into good people because they're like, oh, I didn't really understand what was happening, what it was doing to everyone. And now I've got a good skill set. Let me help on the good side, right?
Yeah.
And then two more stories. 1990s, you've got Kevin Mitnick. He's like the world's most famous hacker. And he was phenomenal. His books were really good. He just actually passed away. But what he would do is he basically would really use social engineering. Do you know what social engineering is?
But maybe let's describe it.
Okay, so it's like basically using all the information that I can find out about you to essentially psychologically trick you into doing something or giving something away. And so what he would do is call up the phone operators, also like the help desk, and basically trick them into giving information so that he could actually compromise their systems, take over. And then he obviously went on to become a good hacker. But he was actually imprisoned. And when he came out, Wozniak gave him his first computer and was like, welcome back. So again, you've got this cybersecurity criminals, but tech enthusiasts really too. So it's a blurred line.
And for people who don't know Wozniak, this is one of the co-founders of Apple.
Good call. Thank you.
Okay, wow. And I mean, it makes sense, right? Because I've often heard, and we've often seen it in movies, other movies as well, where anybody who has the skills to hack into a large corporation, that corporation tends to bring them on because it's like, if you could get into my system, I need you on my team to stop anyone else from it. So I see that silver lining, somehow. And at least in this case, the initial attack, as we would call it, is not, it might be malicious, but it's not intended to bring as much pain, I guess.
Right. And they don't understand, I think, a lot of times too, because like I said before, things are so interconnected. You're not going to find one security specialist in the world that understands how everything works, right? Mm-hmm. They have domains, and so I think it's just accidental a lot of times too.
Yeah. So so far most of the examples we talked about mainly happen to corporations, right? Mm-hmm. But individuals are also at risk, right? Yes. We talked about things like you're throwing away your computer or you're throwing away your phone, and you may not delete everything from it. You may not reset it. So how can we explain this aspect for the persons, the individuals that might get affected? Do you know of any instances where that happened and it was public or
That's a good question. So, I mean, obviously you and I don't have so much reputational damage that can happen. But obviously founders of companies, what are they called? Not people who are in the public eye.
Celebrities or
sure. Influencers nowadays, we call it, right? So these obviously have more to risk, and there's the hackers kind of have more excitement attacking people like that, right? Mm-hmm. You have to think of the adversaries. Who are these bad actors? A lot of times they're opportunistic criminals, so that's why they're going after these companies rather than the individuals, because they have more money to pay, they have more things to lose, right? Mm-hmm. But obviously there are ones that will, you could have revenge hacking. I don't recall exact incidents of this, but people I have seen documentaries where they're, video gaming and all of a sudden you lose and then you actually do a cyber attack back to the person, right? So there's so many ways to enter and ways to compromise accounts that people who are really passionate can find a way. But what individuals are typically experiencing are kind of these massive, mass emails, right? So think as if you're a salesperson selling a good product, right? You're going to be looking at what's my target market? Who has most to spend, right? Who's most probable to buy? And so you look at these types of factors. Well, a bad actor is doing the same kind of thing. So if they're going to send you an email, it's not going to be a targeted email. It's going to be something that's probably a general one, but you're likely to fall for it because you're part of this target market. And that's why, again, they go after these companies. But when you, as an individual, receive one, that's why it's a little more generic. But now I'm going to leapfrog into something else. But that's what AI is going to actually expedite for them, I think, is that they can tailor it at a faster speed to you. And so it's more probable that you fall. And so what we're talking about right now is phishing attempts, right?
Right. So it's kind of like using AI, taking the social engineering we talked about before, and AI then doing that to make it or make the message to you more susceptible.
Yeah, exactly.
Or make you more susceptible to the message. Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, you said phishing, and I think we could jump straight into it, right? I know what it is. In my last job, we did a lot of training on how to recognize a phishing email, for example. But maybe you could explain what it is. And for the persons that may not know, it's not spelled phishing like with FISHING, but it's PH, right? And also, do you know where that word came from?
Yeah, so actually, back to that Kevin Mitnick story, I think right around the 90s or so, freak was like a good thing. It was kind of like you're a guru in this. Nowadays, if you called me a freak, I would be a little offended.
Yeah.
And then ironically enough, in Spanish, if you say someone's freaky but spelled differently, it's cool, right? I mean, you're like it's another guru descriptor. So back then you did phone freaking, and that was the hacking version of like using the phone. And so that like phone and freak, those combined is why we kind of call it phishing with a PH. It's kind of like a throwback to the freaking of the 90s, if that makes sense. Phone freaks, back to that. And so yeah, phishing can be happening over everything, right? So the most typical, like, the one we all know was it the Nigerian prince, right?
Yeah.
Who somehow needed your money. I'm like, he should give me money. But anyway, that's where it got popularized. And then obviously we now get it via text messages. In Spain, we get it a lot saying, correos, you have some mail at the mailbox, go pick it up. Just the other day, actually, my husband was there and a poor grandma walks in and is like, where's my correo? And they're like, no, that's a spam. And she's like, but I entered in my credentials. So it's happening all the time and people are falling for it, unfortunately. And then you're getting now phishing via the phone as well, right? They can even deep fake a voice of a family member, try to trick you into falling for their ruse. So that's the biggest thing that's happening to individuals, and I'd say companies. Another segment of this is like business email compromise, which is basically saying basically an email that's trying to get you to enter in credentials and or get you to actually make payment on behalf of something that's not. It's completely malicious, and that's a pretty big segment. That's taking a lot of money. But anyway, phishing, various forms, and definitely something we need to watch out for.
Yeah. Okay. So if we think about how the attackers attack, phishing could be used for both individuals and companies. And then major hacks that happen, like where you enter a system, that tends to happen more with companies than people. Or do you think individuals could also get like a direct hack?
Absolutely. It's just that the probability and the effects, like when a company gets taken down, whether they have to pay a ransom to be reactivated. I mean, if that happens, you're going to see stock price get hit. You might even see like a full supply chain crumble. You might see even a nation suffer because of this. So it's so much more powerful. So again, you need to think back on like who's doing the attacks. Is it e-crime? Is it just people looking to get a quick payday? Is it nation states? Is it hacktivists, people who hack to make a point? And I think all of those they get more noise when they go after the organizations. But back to WannaCry, I mean, that was where they locked down personal computers of individuals too. And it was like, the screen of death, basically, like you cannot do anything unless you pay us $300 in Bitcoin. That works for people. That's a price point that makes sense. So it just depends on who's attacking, right?
Yeah. You just reminded me of something because I spend way too much time on Instagram. But in doing so, I see a lot of videos of many different things. And there was this one thread that was going around about people who got tricked into losing their money because the hacker or the cyber criminal, they utilize an investment app or an investment platform. So they made a platform that looked like a
Yeah.
legit investment space. But also utilize texting and speaking to the person on the other end of the phone. So like they introduce themselves via text, and then they kind of walk someone through the process of, oh, I invest in this, you should do the same. And people lost like
Right.
money, like
Right.
a family lost all their life savings. A woman with cancer lost like over $1 million that she had saved. Like it was bad,
Yeah.
and I think when in the moment when I looked at that, I did not immediately send my brain to the word cyber crime,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like I thought more about, human beings and what they do and what they have potential to do and how could somebody do that. But I never used the word cyber in my mind. And I
Yeah.
think it's something um, that, will lead us to the next question, because we don't often think about it that way, which means we leave ourselves susceptible to things if we don't assign it into this category of something we need to do and protect ourselves from. um so I guess, what I want to ask you is, what can an individual do, or what can a business do if they want to protect themselves from some cybercrime? I know personally, right now, my iPhone tells me that I have over 30 compromised passwords, and I haven't done anything about it. It's been months. And it's, I don't know why I haven't done anything about it. Maybe I think it's not nothing that could have I don't know, like there's no rational reason other
Right.
than time commitment to going in and changing it. So yeah, so what could individuals do and what could businesses do?
Yeah, and I think going back to how you teed that up, I think one fantastic stat that not many people know about is if you were to rank cybercrime in terms of like considered it a country and you compared its GDP to other GDPs of every other nation out there, um, how high up do you think it would rank? Like you've got US, then you've got China. How far down do you think cybercrime would be?
Mm, maybe somewhere with a European country.
It- It's actually third. It's above
Oh
Japan.
wow. Oh
So
wow. Okay.
it is massive. Organizations are finally bringing it into their executive summaries and in their financial reporting and saying this is the top risk, right? This is what we need to be worried about because it's just like they used to say in cybersecurity, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you'll be attacked. And now I think you've got to change that. I don't know what they've updated it to, but marketing in cybersecurity is phenomenal, very fast. But maybe it's like it's not a matter of when, but it's a matter of yesterday. I don't know. I'm not a marketer, but it's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And some of these organized crime units are like so well organized and structured. They've got a salesperson. They've got even like a BDR before the salesperson, then an account manager, then a customer success, and then they've got support. And because the way they've structured it is they've kind of modeled after the SaaS model. So you don't have to know how to code a malicious program to then spread it out. I can actually go down to the dark web and go ahead and purchase this. And so I can subscribe to it just like I subscribe to Netflix. And I can light it up, and this whole organization that's running sales, pre-sales to post-sales, will run with it over the weekend. On Monday, I will start to see my earnings increase. Right? It's a well-run like organization company. And so what are we supposed to do? I mean, it's really, really tough. There's also, add to that, there's 4 million unfulfilled cybersecurity positions globally. So that's actually one of my suggestions for everyone is start making friends with cybersecurity people. Because there's not that many who know anything. And so you couple that together and you're like, well, what are we supposed to do? Is it on the ownership of the individuals or the businesses? And if these large organizations can't defend themselves, how are we supposed to? We don't have a 24/7 team at home defending us, right? And so I think it's just going to get worse. So back to your question, what are we supposed to do? I mean, there are cyber hygiene things we're supposed to do. And number one has to do with the passwords that you have, right? You have to have it of a certain length. Longer is better. Complexity, unique passwords, never reuse them because obviously once an account is compromised, let's say it's in your Netflix, they're going to copy, paste that and spread it and trust it against everything else. And I think we all have to become cybersecurity experts to an extent. It's unfortunate, right? But it's kind of like the second recommendation is patching, right? And patching is basically you're putting a Band-Aid on a hole. These organizations like Microsoft, Apple, whomever, they're constantly either looking for vulnerabilities or getting them reported to them by these good hackers. As you mentioned, there's platforms where they get that information. And so when they have an update, usually it includes a security fix, and that fix is a patch. It's a Band-Aid on the hole to make sure that nobody can come in, right? So that's the second thing, passwords and patches. And the thing with updates, it's hard to understand the risk level, right? So let's say you've got a car and the car gets recalled. The recall will say, okay, it's for the airbag. And you're like, okay, I'm going to take it in tomorrow. But if it's for the windshield wiper, you're like, okay, I can wait a few days or a few weeks. And you can ascertain your risk level, and you can apply it to the car really fast. But with security, with technology, it's so hard because it's so hard to measure, and especially for individuals. So I think we actually have to start to become experts, because I'm fine if you're driving down the road, and I guess I'm okay that your airbag is not going to deploy. I feel bad for you, but I'm okay with that as another driver. But if you do that and then you don't use your seatbelt, and then you're driving recklessly, and there's a potential that this is morbid, okay, but there's a potential for you to crash and you to affect me, then I'm not okay. So I think as a society, we have to start to realize that this affects other people too, right? Yeah. And so lots to do here, unfortunately.
Okay. That reminded me about someone in my family got, I guess, phished via WhatsApp. And once the person was able to access their WhatsApp, I got the same message that she originally got. Right. So the person now had access to all her contacts, and I got the same message asking about something to do with money and account information. And I knew better because I said, this is strange behavior. I don't expect this. So I called, and then I realized that, she got phished or hacked, or however you would describe it. And this was technically happening to all her contacts now, which was scary because she spoke to both people in her professional life as well as individuals in that, on her WhatsApp. So, listening to that definitely reminded me of that incident. All right. You talked about a few things which I will highlight as some takeaways. So definitely make your passwords better as much as possible. Start to learn about cybersecurity as an individual. And, this is an excellent way to do so by listening to this episode. So thank you for everyone who's listening. And then run your updates because a lot of times we put it off, and there is a reason that the updates are coming in. So I think, at least for individuals, those are three things that we could take away and do. Okay, so early on when we talked about WannaCry, I understand that was malware. Malware is malicious software,
right?
And then there is also viruses.
Yeah.
Are viruses and malware the same thing?
So malware is kind of like the category of badness.
Okay.
and viruses and worms and whatnot. There's a plethora fall under that. And I think, whether it's ones are self-replicating, one needs a user input, like you need to take an action. But I think that doesn't really matter for individuals, not even for the companies. It's more about, who's looking to do harm to you, right? And if it's just a general individual or general cybercrime, well, then you need to do the cyber hygiene best practices that we're talking about. But if you're an organization and you've got, a special IP and you need to protect that, and you're looking to move into a new country, and that nation state has a really strong cybersecurity arm that is actually basically has a new revenue stream. Mm-hmm. And they're doing that by getting your IP and sharing it with their up and coming competitor, right? So you kind of have to have like a broader landscape of what's happening. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's complex, but I don't think the terminology is something that individuals should get stuck on. I think what's important is to know what's happening today. What are the new attacks? And be aware of that so that you don't fall for that. I think that's the best thing that we can do right now.
Okay. And just in case anybody was wondering, you said IP in there, and IP is basically what is used to describe your unique.
No, in this context, I'm actually describing like your crown jewels.
Okay.
Intellectual
property, you mean?
Intellectual property, for
Okay.
example, right?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, not the internet address. Okay.
Yeah, there is internet protocol. I mean, there's, it's so funny. You go from I went kind of from finance to technology, and you've got acronyms like EPS, and you're like, I got this one. It's earnings per share, and then you're like, no, it's events per second. We're monitoring the network activity, right? And so it's just a new lingo. But I think these acronyms they're just so funny across every sector, but they're especially coming up in cybersecurity, and it's almost like, okay, do we want people to understand what we're talking about or no? I mean, there's one that's like, I don't even know if you say OSINT. I think it's OSINT, and which is open source intelligence, basically just scanning what is publicly made public for us to understand what's happening, right? What's happening with the adversaries, what are they talking about us, and stuff like this. And I'm like, that's just when, if someone just goes through a breakup, they do open source intelligence, like nobody, you know what I mean? So these are acronyms that are made to seem very like complex terminologies, when in actuality, this stuff is very easy to understand if we say it in a way that is understandable for all audiences. So,
okay, so thank you. We talked a little bit about AI in the beginning of the conversation, and we talked about how it will, help or maybe make things easier for the hackers.
right.
Is there a flip side to that where AI can also help individuals and companies in terms of protection?
Yeah. There absolutely is. And so I think that's what people have been talking about more so in the news, especially the vendors. They come out and they say, okay, artificial intelligence for cybersecurity. What does this look like? We can speed up detection. We can speed up response. We can speed up knowledge for the cybersecurity specialists. And that's definitely going on right now. I think actually the flip side is the one that's not talked about enough, which is cybersecurity for AI. So not AI for cybersecurity, right?
Okay.
And so it's, what, I'm going to be implementing AI in my company or individually, and what do I need to be made aware of? Even international security standards for this are kind of slow to come out. And so that's a little scary. What can they do today with artificial intelligence? The cybersecurity hackers, the bad ones, is that, right now when I write code, it's just like if I'm a software developer, I'm writing code for a program or whatnot. That AI can actually speed up the process of me creating that. And that's the same with software development as cybersecurity hacks. It doesn't yet allow for the execution of that, was what I understand. So you still have to have like a bad actor behind that kind of clicking send, figuratively speaking there. So that'll be the next step, and then it'll be just much faster. And then what they're also doing with AI right now is that those phishing emails. I mean, IBM's done a test to see if we can spot an AI phishing email versus a non-AI phishing email, and I think it does come up with that. Come down to the open source intelligence that they can gather about you and I, right? They can tailor it so fast to what would be interesting for you to receive, right? And so that's definitely scary. But yeah, it's on both sides of the coin. Artificial intelligence is helping both. One thing more to consider is that I think individuals and businesses are kind of like, we wait to try things out sometimes, whereas hackers are very much alpha users. They're not beta users. They're right in there. As soon as something is potentially going to be released, even maybe they'll hack it and they'll pull it and then start playing with it. So they always have a bit of a one-step advantage to this.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where we are with that.
Yeah. All right. So I think this is a good point for us to transition more about, our personal connections to this, right? You talked a bit in the beginning. You shared that you did work with IBM Security, and you had some other experience. But was there anything else that drew you to pursuing this job as a career? Because you had a job. Why make the jump?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it was the two things. Like I mentioned, it was WannaCry when that took place. It was a wild thing to watch. I think it's still considered the largest ransomware attack that has happened. And again, why ransomware makes so much sense for the criminals and is so bad for everybody is that no matter what type of business you are, it works because it locks you down. You cannot keep operating. And everyone, you and I included, we've got the only certain amount of time and amount of money. We need to keep working. So if we could not, that will affect us. That will affect anybody. And so that was really instrumental in bringing me over. But then also I was actually at a Salesforce conference, the big one, Dreamforce. And the CEO of the Girl Scouts was presenting. And I'm like, why is she presenting in the tent of cybersecurity at a Salesforce conference? This doesn't make sense at all. But I listened to her. And I think before or after that, she went on to become, I believe, the CEO of Qualcomm. So she's got a great track record. She's a wonderful professional, very approachable. And she presents and she says, do you know the number one badge that these little girls at the Girl Scouts are requesting today? And I'm thinking, no, brownies. Like, I don't know. I wasn't a Girl Scout. I don't really get it. And she's like, no, it's actually cybersecurity and privacy. I'm like,
wow.
What? And what her story was that these little girls like somehow innately understood that there's this 4 million, unfulfilled, there's a skills gap. They know their parents don't understand how to protect them in this digital realm. They know that a bad person could go replicate, their garage door opener and enter very easily. And they're like, we need to start protecting ourselves. I mean, unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that was the turning point where I was like, okay, this is for everyone. And I don't think, I think if you're a person who cares about other people, you can't not have interest in cybersecurity, right? That's what it's about. It's about protecting other people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I know, like, I think about it when it comes to my parents, or my siblings when they spend time on social or the types of emails I get. I know I care about it personally because I'm getting all these phone calls from fake numbers right now. And I'm getting charged for it because I'm roaming internationally. And I'm like, why am I paying? So I care from that aspect. But I would imagine it's the same way if someone thinks about why they want to be a police officer, why they want to be a doctor or a teacher. It makes sense that it's right up there in terms of looking out for other people. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So then what if someone is interested? What if somebody wants to be like, I listened to this, so I've been thinking about it for a while. I think this is a space that I want to work in. How do they get there?
Well, first off, I would be so happy to hear that. So this is a complex part of it actually. And even though there's the skills gap, we need people, it's still hard to enter. And I think it's quite unfair that you have a lot of programs out there that are meant to bridge the skills gap. A lot of those are geared towards the early professionals. So if you're a career changer, it's even harder. But there are quite a lot of organizations out there. So the first certification I did was called Security Plus, and it's a very entry level one. There's even a more beginner one that I think it is like Security Professional. We can link to it later if you want, but it's, these aren't that expensive. And they give you a good kind of overview. But now in the industry, you've got some people who love certifications and others who are like, it doesn't matter. It's all about experience or just know how. So I think the number one step to do is find a potential mentor and work with that individual. And it's got to be someone who kind of understands your abilities and what you're looking to do, and help you craft that, because even that second part is really hard to define when you're early on in cybersecurity. And they can kind of guide you, right? Because there are so many governing body or certifying authorities out there, in so many different certifications, it's really hard to say what's always the best one. Depends on your background as well. Depends on the region. There's a new one out right now that is called, it's not that new, but it's basically it's for organizations, and you can become an auditor for this, and it's basically creating an information security system within an organization. And I just did that one, and it's really, really nice, because it gives a very holistic understanding of all the moving parts of a business, how many different groups need to pay attention and to work together to make this system make sense. So that's another one I would suggest, which is ISO 27001. But also, like, they can just literally pick up one of these books. So Security Plus, the one I did, just start looking through the book. Are you interested in cryptography? Are you interested in incident response? Are you interested in working with the SOC, which is the Security Operations Center. Again, there are so many different domains, but there's a lot of information out there to help.
Yeah. Okay, well, what we could do is put somewhere in the comments or the website for this episode, we could list some resources there or
Perfect.
create a space with some of the resources you recommend. Now, this is good if someone is trying to become a professional in the space, right? Like to build a career. But what about individuals?
Yeah. I don't remember the individual who does this newsletter, but there's in the US, there's a gentleman who runs through like tech tidbits. These are good. There's a gentleman, he's a journalist. His name is Brian Krebs. I follow him. Now, his articles may be a little too advanced, but they talk about current hacks that are happening right now. Like there's a one called MFA bombing, which is multi-factor authentication bombing. So you get a lot of updates to your phone saying like, do you want to allow or deny? And you get so many that at some point you just go like, okay, I allow it. And they follow up with social engineering, basically a phone call, and they really get you if you actually enter in your credentials at that point. So he does some good ones like that. But for strictly individuals who are just concerned about their own security hygiene, I would suggest the former. We'll include that one in the links. I just can't recall his name at this moment.
No problem.
I love books. So like I do have some cybersecurity books that I would suggest. One is called The Cuckoo's Egg. And this is about a professor. No, actually, he was a student at Berkeley studying like astronomy or something, and happened to fall upon a Russian hacker that he then had to provide information to the FBI with on how to track this person down. It was like the first really well documented kind of incident response to an incident that a professional had undergone with no cybersecurity background. So he does a phenomenal job describing the details. And it's also one of the first cases that we have documented in which a private sector is actually helping the government with this kind of intel sharing. Usually that was very separate. And so that's one really good book to read. And the other one would be This Is How They Tell Me the World Ends. This book, I forget the woman who wrote it, but she does a phenomenal job explaining what are 0 days all the way to like cyber warfare. And it's really digestible because, again, she's a non-cybersecurity professional who then goes to work for that unit at, I believe, the Times. So that's another one.
But okay, that is interesting. But what is 0 day?
So a 0 day is essentially when one of those vulnerabilities comes to light, and no one's really been notified about this yet. So you have 0 days to patch it. It's like you need to start like it's open to the world, and remember, patching is putting the Band-Aid on that vulnerability. And historically, nation states would kind of stockpile those and keep them and not tell anyone. So they always had a way to enter into computer systems of their adversaries. And that's kind of now come to light. And now, as we've talked about before, these organizations like Microsoft, et cetera, is publishing that information, patching it immediately. And we're all sharing it theoretically amongst one another.
Okay, we talked a little bit before, right? We talked about, AI, how it's going to play in. We talked about the fact that there are all these jobs that are, pending people to fill them. When you think about the future of cybersecurity, I guess if you could tell us what you think, in your opinion, it's going to get to in maybe 5 years, but also what you hope for.
Okay, sure. So if you, and there's maps that can actually like show you how bad it's gotten. I think it's Information is Beautiful is one of those maps. So, I mean, I'm only since 2017 been in this, but if you talk to someone who's been a cybersecurity professional for the past 30 years, they say it's only gotten worse and it's only going to get worse. And I think their voice obviously has more weight than my own. And I think because of the proliferation of devices, we each don't have one device only anymore to update, to manage. That's just going to get worse. Augmented reality is opening up a completely new realm, right? The faster we build, the more there is to secure, I guess. And that's the hard part. So I don't have a positive outlook. I think just doing this call together, for example, someone could use this later on, do a deep fake, or even without it, you could probably create a deep fake. And so you've got so many different kind of risks that we're exposing ourselves to by using technology. But I think we're moving in the right direction in the terms of people are starting to hold organizations accountable. And I think that goes back to, who is accountable to this. Right now, if I have an Internet of Technology device at home, like a Google or a Google Home or an Alexa, I can say, okay, I'm going to apply my individual cybersecurity practices to that and make sure that everything is secure. And one of those is segmenting it. So you should have that on a separate Wi-Fi than what you use your prized possessions devices like your phone and your computer. Well, the stupid thing is that inherently your Google Home or Alexa has to be connected to the same internet as your iPhone for it to function. And so you've got these products out there and these vendors, these big tech companies that say we take security seriously, but like, do they really? Right. And I don't even know if they properly advise you when there's end of life, when a product, they're no longer supporting a product and providing it security patches. They're just like, that one's too old, we don't care, So until they have like literally the warning labels on the outside of these devices, I think businesses have a lot of things to do there, right? Governments will always be one step behind. Individuals, there's no way we could handle all of this on our own. So I put the ownership on them, but I think us as the users and the customers of these companies, if we continue to educate ourselves and hold them accountable, it's just like the sustainability movement, right? Where we started pushing that and that started to take form and become a little more official. So that's the only way that I could possibly have a positive outlook on this. And sessions like this, right? Tell me something I don't know. Cybersecurity. Okay, let's break it down, right? These things are really, really good for individuals, and we need more of that. Net. Yeah. So good job.
Thank you. Thank you. I am somebody who's a visual and auditory learner, so I hope that it helps somebody else. But on that note, I love movies and television. Again, also spend too much time doing that. But let's say someone is like me. You talked a lot about the books that you enjoy, and we talked about Catch Me If You Can at the beginning. Are there any cool movies you think someone could look at least maybe encourage them to to think about cybersecurity more, or just a good movie that they could both learn and enjoy?
Okay, so that I don't know of any that are like completely accurate, for example, but there are on YouTube videos where you have cybersecurity specialists taking apart films and saying that's actually accurate and that is absolutely impossible as of today. And so I don't know the name of that, but on YouTube, that's definitely searchable. That's pretty neat.
Okay. Yeah. I will look for that. I'll look for that. I'm sure I'll enjoy watching it. Hopefully they don't have any of my favorite movies on there.
Yeah, they probably do.
Yeah. All right. So Jessica, I think we've come to the end of the episode, more or less. Is there anything that we forgot to mention or a really good point that you wanted to make that we didn't cover today?
Yeah, I think that's two things. So one I'm going to say, and the other one you're going to say, actually. You have it in your brain. So the first one is I just started, obviously LinkedIn Learning has a lot of cool videos. And so if you have access to that, I think that's a really cool way to get content. And there's a lot of new videos coming out. I'm seeing that to be really nice for individuals like us who need to understand something really, really fast. YouTube, sometimes, you need to parse through things and vet it a little bit more. So that would be my suggestion. And I'll add the hashtag of this content creator that I really like now. That's my one suggestion. And the second one is actually what you're going to say, which is, what are you supposed to do if you realize that there is malicious activity, suspicious activity happening on your device? What are you supposed to do?
If I realize there's suspicious activity, should I turn off my device? Or disconnect my device? That is it. From the internet.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, I remember now. Do not turn it off. Disconnect it from the internet.
Correct. To kind of isolate it to the device so that it doesn't spread to your other devices. And in that way, we actually preserve the evidence of what might have transpired and then call up a technician in Mexico in Spain.
Okay. What is it in Spain? Technical?
Technical.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah. So let's say something is happening and it looks fishy.
With an F or a PH?
PH, fishy.
Okay.
Both. I think both will apply here. Okay, I disconnect. But what if I can't control my device?
Then a last resort would be turn it off. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
and remember, you're at home. Disconnect can be just literally take the router, remove the Wi-Fi connection from the wall versus from your computer. If your computer, you
Okay.
can remove the mouse or use the keyboard, for example. That's your
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
So do what you can, pull out the router, something. Last resort, turn off the device.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I think we've come to the end. Unless you have final words,
I just have a joke I recently found.
go for it.
It's so bad. What happened? Where did the cybersecurity team go? Samantha, do you know?
No.
They ran somewhere. I'll leave you with that one.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jessica. It was a pleasure to have you. I hope our listeners learned something. I am sure somebody will learn something from this. I definitely learned a lot of stuff. I am going to go call my mom now and tell her everything that she should and should not do
Very good.
to make sure she doesn't get to be a victim of this. But thank you so much. This was so great. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too. Okay.
All right. Okay. You ready?
No. I'm so excited, but also scared. Okay, I'm ready. Let's do it.
Okay. It'll be good.